Good evening. Welcome. Interesting day for all. We'll start with a roll call. I see him there, live and in color. Scott Miller. Scott, you got your sound on? Yeah. Okay. Well, you're with us physically. I don't know how to get word to him other than I'll text him. Scott, Ann Oberchain.
Yep, here, present.
Heather Williams. Heather. Jen Archuleta.
Present.
Paula Fitzgerald.
I'm here.
Trace Baker.
Present.
Stephen Merrick.
Present.
And Tony Lewis. And Jim Krug present. It's Scott. He's going to get wired. Okay. First item of business is approval of the August 27th meeting minutes. And so any questions or revision to the minutes as presented? And in that case, at this time, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Trace Baker. I move that the POSAC approve the, when are we? August minutes? Yeah, okay.
Yes, that's so long ago. Yes, but August
Jen
20th.
Archuleta, second.
Any further discussion? So move. Let's call for a vote. All those in favor of approval of the minutes say aye.
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 Those opposed, like sign. Let the record show the minutes have been approved. The first item on the agenda is the study session on the Gross Reservoir and Dam expansion docket with Jeff. Moline is with us, and Jeff. There he is up in the corner. Jeff.
Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen. And I gotta go to, let's see here. Is that working? Yep, okay.
Yep, it's good.
All right. All right, thanks everybody. I'm looking forward to talking with you about this. This is, we've got an hour set aside for this. This is a study session to discuss the Gross Reservoir Dam expansion project. It's a 1041 project. I've got the presentation divided up into a couple of sections here because we have new members and because we haven't had a chance to discuss a project such as this, a 1041 project. I thought it would be helpful to go through a little bit of our 1041 regulations. And then after that, I'll talk about some of the things that our staff is looking at when we're reviewing this very large and complex project. And because this is a study session, I'm gonna like to keep it really informal, and I just invite you all to ask me questions and stop me anytime. There's quite a bit of information about this docket, and there's probably 40 or so slides. I'll keep it moving, but if you just stop and we can dig into the detail as much as you'd like. So with that, I'm gonna start us going here. We're right now in what we call the referral period for this application. And so the application was submitted last month to Boulder County, and then the county community planning and permitting department, it's called, refers the information out to a variety of other agencies. And that includes people on our staff. Our department is one of those referral agencies. And then in the case of some applications, you all, POSAC is really a referral agency as well. And that is why we're here before you today. So we're in this referral period. We have to complete our comments by November 13th. So any comments you have this evening, we'll take those along with our staff comments that we working on now, and we'll send those to the Community Planning and Permitting Department, and then they will then take that information and move forward with the process. Ultimately, this probably ends up going to most certainly the board, and there's the option of it also going to the Planning Commission. So,
Say, Jay,
yeah.
is the scope of the work we're going to do tonight for the construction phase only, or does it include construction and operation once construction is complete?
It would be both. It would be the construction and the long-term effects of the project as well. So any kind of long-term impacts that the project would have. Good question. So let's see. So we're gonna talk about the proposal itself here after I go through some preliminary information about the 1041 process for you. All of the tables and figures that you're going to see later in the presentation are all pulled. I just pulled them directly from either they're things that are from our comprehensive plan, our land use code, or most of the later figures and slides are from the 1041 application itself. The link to that was forwarded to you, I believe, and attached in my memo. There's lots and lots and lots of information in that. This is again, as I mentioned before, a very complex project, and we're going to go through parts of it here. And this has been a project that the applicant, Denver Water, has been working on for well over 10 years. And so they have, over the course of their processes, they have gone through a number of different environmental reviews. And so some of their information comes from those environmental reviews with especially the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, Ferc. You'll hear me talk about them today. So that process, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, triggered a NEPA process. And so there's been a environmental impact statement and those kinds of information. So that's where a lot of this information comes from. But I pulled things directly from the 1041 application. As a reminder, we're not taking public comment this evening. This is a study session for you and for us to prepare our referral comments. And but there is the ability, of course, for the public to comment on this, and the link to that is included on the bottom of this slide. So moving on. So 1041 processes. It's 1041, I believe, refers to the state enabling legislation number, but it's a location and extent and areas and activities of state interest portion of our land use code. And the purpose, one of the purposes is making sure that utilities are in conformance with our comprehensive plan. And one of the intents is, I'm gonna hide something there. Okay, is really regulating the projects that fall within that category to address regulating so that we can address any impacts that they might have. So this is just as an aside. We have a staff that provides comments, environmental and open space comments on a variety of lots of different land use applications, including this 1041 process. But as I mentioned, in this case, we also have a role for you. And I just took this verbatim out of the land use code. And so this is why we're here tonight. We need to discuss this application with you. We'll talk a little bit about this evening, talk a little bit about some of our preliminary comments and some of the things that we've identified as concern points. I don't have really comments so much as areas of interest that we're looking at in our review, our staff review, and then we'll want to hear what comments you might have about those.
Jeff, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So will this then come back to us for actual action item, or is this just going to be informational all the way through with just comments for your
Yeah,
response?
it's the latter option there, Paula. So
Okay.
POSAC in this situation is not a body that will act on the entire application. We're the role for us that's spelled out for POSAC in that 1041 regulation is in the referral process. So this is the part of yeah. So it's this part right now. This role of reviewing the application itself and the impacts that it might have, and then we'll provide that information to the planning department. Does that help? All right, moving on. These are some of the purposes and intents. I just threw these up here. I'm not going to read them. There's a whole host of things that could have been excerpted from here, but these are the kinds of things that we're looking in our review, in our Parks and Open Space review for this project, and things that we'll potentially be commenting on. And in particular, for us, these are the kinds of things that our department is expected to lead the review in. We'll be looking at these wetland and riparian areas, terrestrial aquatic animal life, other environmental resources, including resources that have been identified in the Boulder County Comprehensive Plan, BCCP. And then we'll also be looking at the quality or quantity of recreational opportunities and experience. I realize this slide is kind of odd. It's got all kinds of different font sizes and stuff. What I wanted to do is, again, for people who are new to these processes, I wanted to include things just sort of directly from the land use code itself, and then highlight the things that I wanted you to be aware of, especially. And again, so these are the portions of the 1041 code review that the county is looking at our department and your and POSAC's involvement as kind of the lead agency to provide the comments on these aspects. There are, however, other things in the 1041 process that we won't be the lead reviewer on. We might provide some information on air quality, visual quality, surface water, groundwater, cultural resources, but we're not the lead reviewer of those. And other agencies and other departments in the county, such as public health, the Office of Sustainability, community permitting and planning itself, will be have staff taking a look at these things as well.
Hey, Jeff, quick question.
Yeah, please.
Do you anticipate any really substantive changes based on what's currently happening with the fire situation?
I don't, I guess, and I'm probably not the right person to answer the question, but I think I guess what I would say is, I guess there could be potentially some, that there might be something where an applicant says, I want to, because of fire situations or something, I might need to change something with relationship to my application. But I think in the long term, my sense is that the applicant is going to want to continue with this project in some form or fashion. Does that help, Jen?
Yep. I was just wondering, how many components, regarding forestry or forest thinning or fire mitigation were involved in some of these. So
yeah,
curious.
well, yeah, and we will get into some of that for sure. And one of the things that we probably won't get that much into this evening is, I'm not going to spend a lot of time describing the applicant's perspective on why they feel like they need this this facility. But from reviewing the application, I guess I would just share that from the applicant's perspective, I think they would say that the kind of fire situation that we're seeing is one of the reasons they would say that they feel like they'd like to expand this site here to provide more resilience to their water supply system. So I think again, we would want to hear, and of course, in future public meetings, the public will have an extensive opportunity to hear from the applicant about that. But just reflecting what was in the application already, I think that's what they would say is it's these kind of events that that were one of the driving factors for them to consider the expansion up here. So,
Hey, Jeff, Jim Cruz.
Yeah.
I'm just going to ask the political question since we're in that season.
Yeah.
My understanding is the current commissioners aren't wild about, I mean, you could write a book on the history of Gross Reservoir, right? So
Yeah.
I don't think the current commissioners, my guess is, are in favor of it. Is that a safe assumption?
That's not an assumption I would make since we're in like a quasi judicial hearing and
Okay. I'll make this assumption. We're going to have
Yeah.
2 new commissioners in January, and if I listen to them in their campaigns, my guess is there's going to be some county opposition to it. My guess is the public has, for the most part, been sort of disapproving of it, right? If you go back past 10, 15 years. But my question is the purpose of what you guys are doing? In other words, I've been involved in enough of that kind of work that I would ask the question, are you guys going to take, is the idea that POSAC and you all, Parks and Open Space, are going to take an unbiased view, and you're going to do this, quote, the water quality or you're going to stay out of some of that stuff, but the stuff you're going to involve is you're hopefully going to take an unbiased viewpoint of it, because you can sort of go down the road of starting out, we can find a lot of stuff. Why not to do this? Any EIS or any NPA or any of that. So that's what I'm just asking is that a lot of that been discussed? I mean,
I guess maybe one thing I can say, Jim, is I'm sorry, Chair Krug. One thing I would say is that there are aspects. So we're doing everything like we always do by the land use code, and so we're working through and conducting our review of, again, like if I go back a page. We're conducting our review of what we think the project is going to impact in terms of wetlands, riparian areas. We are as objective as we can be in assessing those impacts. Now, but the thing that I did want to say is there are some aspects of the application, for example, on other alternatives that the applicant examined that could have been in lieu of this particular expansion of Gross Reservoir. The applicant looked at a whole host of other potential options and alternatives to doing this expansion. So there will be other people and other reviewers in the county organization that will be reviewing those aspects of the application as well. So I think for us in Parks and Open Space, our review really sticks to these things that are up here on the slides now, and they're ones that we review, can review and will review very objectively in accordance with the 1041 process.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help?
Thank you. Yes.
Yep. Okay. Good questions.
One other question, we get too far away from Jen's point about impact of fire.
Sure.
And one thing that I was wondering about is because Heil is going to be closed for a long time, and that's going to displace all these people who are, going to be looking for other places to hike and ride, and that may well cause a lot more traffic into Walker. And so we have to think about that, but maybe not discussed right now.
No, that is a great that is a great thing to consider. And one of the things coming up here I'm going to advance here. One of the things coming up here is a timeline. In fact, it's one of the very next slides. And so you'll see that it's going to be a little while before work would occur up here if this project is approved. All right. So this is just, again, I'm not going to read these things, but I'm just going to pull highlights and start to give a sense to you of the size of the project here. So what you can see here is what the applicant is hoping to do is with the approval of this, they'll be able to get an additional 77,000 acre feet of storage in the reservoir. Currently, there's 42,000 acre feet in the reservoir. The figure there, the reason that is 77 is divided into the two components. That 5,000 acre foot is a volume of water that the city of Boulder and the city of Lafayette have identified as water they'd like to use as an environmental pool to create better downstream conditions on South Boulder Creek. Let's see, you can see the surface area. We're more than doubling the surface area of the reservoir with this raise in height of 131 feet. The crest of the dam itself nearly doubles as well. And the volume of material that will be required to build this dam is 930,000 cubic yards of material. So let's go to the next one. Here's this proposal timeline. You can see at the bottom of this figure, again, these all the tables and figures came right out of the application or the first appendix with the figures in it. So this, you can see that the first number of years are occupied with additional study, temporary facilities, installing temporary recreation facilities. And then one thing I wanted to point out about halfway down is some quarrying operations. The project intends to quarry a portion of the area to use that material to help with the construction of the dam itself. That by quarrying on site, you minimize obviously the number of truck trips and travel and those kinds of things. So you can see that that's due to be a 5-year timeline for that quarrying operation. And then you can see the timelines for everything else. And then 7 years out would be the first filling of the reservoir itself. I did want to note that some of the forestry activities would occur as the dam is being constructed, but some of that forestry activity actually occurs towards the end of the project. They can do that in conjunction with some of the other operations that they're doing. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well. This is their site plan. Can you guys see my my cursor? I have it right now in the kind of underneath the open space.
Yeah.
Words. You can?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. So I'm gonna scroll over the site plan map here for just a second. What I wanted to point out is Walker Ranch is the diagonally cross-hatched green property there to the, as you probably all know, to the east and north of the reservoir itself. One of our facilities is on South Boulder Creek, kind of in this area here downstream from the dam itself. One of the other things I wanted to point out in this particular exhibit was the boundary of the Ferc project. So again, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, they have involvement in this project for a variety of reasons, including the hydroelectric component of the project. Also,
in the timing of this conflict. Repeat
Huh. Can you guys hear that?
It's a little Star Wars like.
Okay. So let's see. So this FERC boundary is just something for you all to keep in mind, because so much of the past environmental research and review has focused on the area inside that particular red boundary there. Again, I'll go to the next exhibit here. This project is going to do a whole variety of things that are outside the project area as well, including some improvements to the Gross Dam Road Highway 72 intersection. There are proposals to widen the road, Gross Dam Road, in a number of locations to help with the transport of materials to and from the construction site. There's a relocation of a multi-use trail. I'm going to keep us moving here. Just stop me if you see anything. Here's some information on this exhibit about the expansion project itself, where particular items are located. The main staging areas are on the what I guess I would call the south side of the dam footprint there. Let's see. One thing I wanted to point out, if you can still see my cursor, there were 2 quarry sites that were identified. The one that is preferred and the one that's described here as the primary one is the Osprey Point one, and it's located in a little bench, or excuse me, in a little gully here on the south side of the project. This other one, this FEIS quarry, would not be used as long as adequate material can be found in this first one, this Osprey Point one. Oh, let's see. That's maybe enough on this exhibit for now. Again, stop me if anybody has any questions. Here is a plan profile, centerline profile of the dam expansion, excuse me, the new dam itself. This exhibit here has each of these squares is 100 horizontal feet. So this is extending from a point here to 1,000, so 2,000 feet. Again, the top of the dam is almost 2,000 feet long. This this y-axis, or excuse me, this vertical axis is a little exaggerated, and in response or in respect to the horizontal axis here. And so this, so anyway, you can see the full height here. And this right here is the existing dam, and then this portion here is the dam raise, as they say.
Jeff, I have a question.
You bet.
And that's where the spillway is located. I believe it's proposed to be in the same location, but I'm not familiar. I couldn't see where that was in the referral information.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Paula. If you can see my cursor again, my cursor right now is hovering over the spillway on the existing dam, and then if you go up the 130 feet, you can see where that spillway would be located. Evidently, it's 162 feet wide, so it would be right here, kind of again in the middle of the facility.
Is there another secondary spillway for emergency release?
Not that I am aware of.
Okay.
That is something we can, that's certainly something that's probably an information that I just haven't committed to memory, but that's something we can sure note, and where the location of that any other secondary spillway would be.
And if you want, I can hold my comment on that till later.
No, that you can speak to it now. The one thing I would add is that, like this, the project itself will be, of course, fully reviewed by our stormwater and floodplain management group.
So the only comment I have is in remembrance of the big flood and Button Rock, Ralph Price Reservoir.
Mhm.
And talking with the water engineers after that event, which totally blew out the spillway, was the only reason the dam was saved was because the spillway was on the other side of basically a little nub of mountain. Or
Huh.
else it
Wow.
would have taken the whole thing out.
Yeah.
Wow.
So of course,
Wow.
that's pretty frightening thought with this much water contained right above large
Mhm, mhm.
communities as well as the
Yes,
environmental.
yes.
So anyway, I would just raise that as a question.
Sure. And again, one that that's a good one, and that's one that will get some really good review by people in like our public works department, and others that are kind of in the engineering side of things. So
Great.
yeah,
Thank you.
good. Yeah, you bet. I'm going to move on. This next exhibit here is depicting some of the staging areas that will be necessary for the build itself. And just to let people have a sense of, there's going to be some cleared areas. And the first one of these, or I guess combined, these total about 10 acres of staging areas that would be necessary for the construction of the dam. These are staging areas that are on the south side of the dam. This exhibit helps, I think for me, it eases my understanding of land ownership patterns in the area. So you can see the reservoir itself in blue there. In green is the Ferc boundary that we've spoken about. In gray, the gray area is the area of Forest Service land. So there is certainly Forest Service land that's involved in this project, and the applicant has the ability to use that land for this project. And in fact, that's part of what the Ferc review is about. And then the applicant has ownership interest in along this. You can see with the legend there, the brown hatching represents their ownership areas out east of the forest boundary. So this is my, oh, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. This is my one and only slide about visual impacts for the evening. This was an exhibit that, again, of course, was included in the application. The top picture there is one of the existing conditions, of course. One of the places to note would be I think it's called the dam recreation area associated with this area that's on the south side of the current dam. I've got my cursor hovered over it. That's one area where you can see what the raise of the dam and the reservoir is how it's going to sort of change that, how it will change the visual continuity of that area quite dramatically. Some of the other permanent visual impacts, one thing that on this that's going to be a little challenging to see, but there will be some portions of the quarry that's used to generate some of the material for the dam raise. Some of that quarry wall will remain exposed. Some of it will be inundated once the reservoir is filled, but a portion of that quarry wall will remain and be a permanent visual impact. There's a saddle dam, a secondary dam, actually a small one that will be constructed in one of the gullies, actually just up from the Osprey Point quarry. So that dam will be visible. And of course, the new dam and then the reservoir itself. Some of the kinds of temporary visual impacts would be construction sites, staging areas, and some of those things that will be reclaimed. So those are the kinds of things that we'll be making some comments on. If any of you have thoughts on that, you can let me know now. Otherwise, we'll head into some of the other environmental impact parts of the application.
Hey, Jeff, this is Jim Krug. I just one comment is that, and maybe you can verify this, but it's been talked about, that would be probably the largest construction project in Boulder County in many, many, many years. And that if you think of the amount of dirt, I just have the visions on 72 and on those roads, they're going to have to do something, because if you look at Stagecoach Dam up by Steamboat and some of the others I'm familiar with, the biggest complaint usually is the traffic during construction, with all those semis going in and out all day. And if the amount of dirt, I was told the amount of dirt that has to be moved would be, those of you who were here when Flatirons Crossing in Interlaken was built off of 36, that it's about 6 to 8 times the amount of dirt that's going to need to be moved. So that's a lot of dirt.
Yep. This is a big project, and lots of materials. So you raise good points. We in our department, we don't look too much at those transportation impacts. To the extent that those transportation impacts would in some way cause, if they would affect a visitation at Walker Ranch, for example, that would be something that we would be looking at. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Jeff, is there a similar simulation of what it would appear from the east on the Gross Dam Road on the way to and from Walker?
I don't have, and that's a good that would be a good request. So from portions of the Gross Dam Road, as you're below the dam, it would be that view that I showed kind of a couple of slides ago of the new dam itself, the engineering drawing of that. But for parts of the road where you get back up above 7,400 feet elevation, and then you would maybe be able to get a different viewpoint. So yeah, that's a good, I can ask the applicant if they have any images. I didn't see any in the application though.
Hey, Jeff.
Yep.
This is Tony Lewis. I'm just curious, this photographic simulation,
Yeah.
In a way, it presents a best case scenario. I've rarely seen reservoirs fully filled.
Yeah.
And so I'm just kind of curious if they've done any simulations, what it looks like half filled. Because this makes it seem like it's going to be this beautiful body of water, and yet most of the reservoirs I see are at best half filled.
Yeah, good comment. I'm taking a few notes here. The applicant, this is not a part of the application that I spent a lot of time reading, but I think the applicant does have some has some information in there about what the standard kind of what the normal high water elevation will be, let's say. So there is some information in there, and so that's something that we can look at in our comments and pass those on to CPP. Yeah, good.
I had another question. Jeff.
Yeah.
You were talking about impacts on Walker Ranch. There was a lot of discussion in the materials I read about traffic on Winnegar Ridge Road and Lazy Z Road. And my question is, have you thought about how that might impact Walker Ranch? I'm a former resident of that area, which is why I'm asking.
That is something we should totally take into account. Absolutely. We haven't, as I mentioned, we haven't dug in especially hard on the transportation impacts. Our Public Works Department will be doing that and making sure that, they'll be getting into those in depth. But you're right, to the extent that those transportation impacts could affect visitation at Walker Ranch, that's something we should look at.
Yeah, thanks.
You bet. Great comments. All right. Shall we move on? Another one, I guess actually I forgot, before we get into the truly and more, kind of typical environmental impacts, we do want to review some of the recreational impacts. Again, this project is not going to have any, of course, any direct impacts on our open space. But one of the things that we feel like we are charged to do is to look at the impacts on the site itself. And of course, the applicant has done a lot of review of this and consideration of this. The applicant does run the facilities, or I should say manage the recreation facilities that are at the Gross Reservoir site. And so this map gives a sense of where those generally are located on the property, and the associated trails. And what the applicant is going to be doing is 7 of the 9 areas that are identified here as recreation areas are going to be inundated as the water line comes up. You might be able to just barely see. So you can see the existing reservoir elevation, and then if you go up the 131 feet, you can see this faint blue line here that kind of goes around and contours around. And so you can see some of these areas are going to be heavily impacted, of course, by the inundation. The applicant has indicated that they'll be moving those, and they'll be also trying to minimize impacts to recreation on the site as much as possible, even through construction. Some of the places, for example, the dam recreation area here, as we noted earlier, that's where all those staging areas are. That's where a lot of construction activity is going to be. So that will not be able to be open at all during the construction project. But some of these other ones, they've talked about allowing them to stay open as the project is going on. So
I saw some references to Denver Water having written a recreation management plan. But after a lot of looking, I could not find that. But it talked about, if I remember correctly, that it will be amended after a year of FERC approval, and the county might get some input into that. And again, more concerned about impacts to recreation at Walker and Myers than anything that happens on site.
Good. So, and more good comments. That recreation management plan is, I believe, primarily designed to address impacts on the Forest Service lands that are the subject of the previous FERC reviews.
Okay.
And so that's where that will occur primarily. So I'm going to go back one slide here. So I don't know if you're aware or how familiar you are, but this part of the kind of Winegar Ridge area here, where Winegar Ridge kind of extends into the reservoir, that is a part of the forest that I believe Denver Water manages the recreational aspect of that, though. And so I think, for example, that's one of the areas that would be heavily addressed in sort of this recreation management plan, along with some of these other sorts of things where there are trails that are being inundated, for example, up Winegar Gulch. So this inlet site now is moving probably 1,500 feet upstream. So I think that plan is intended to focus on the areas that are in the national forest. But again, where there might be impacts for us at Walker would be things that would be good for us to address. And then as well as how Walker, how Walker, Gross, and the adjacent forest areas all kind of work as a system. And and some of the same parking areas are serving for, you know, a person's parking at a Denver water lot, but then recreating, you know, who knows, on the forest, on Walker Ranch. So yeah, lots of kind of crossover impacts and recreation up there.
Yeah, the Crescent Meadows parking lot is actually in the Eldo State Park.
Yeah, good point.
But I have used that parking lot to access the Walker Loop Trail. And when I was down there last summer, midweek, there were quite a few people getting onto the loop trail from Crescent Meadows.
Sorry, I was taking some notes here. All right. So these are some of the things that we've identified and pulled out from the application, and I appreciate your comments that you've made, and we'll take note of those. One of the other interesting things that they've been asked to work on is a human bear interaction plan, which I think is something we'd be supportive of as well. So. All right, so now we're going to move into the more traditional environmental impacts, starting with wetlands and riparian areas. This is an exhibit that overlaid on some of our information, some of our county information about wetland and riparian areas. When the applicant went out and did surveys, they identified these areas. They're hard to see on this exhibit. So especially they found wetland and riparian areas up these gullies on the west side of the project. That's not unusual. These are the places where the streams, this lower one here is where South Boulder Creek enters Gross Reservoir. This is Winnegar Gulch, and Forsyth Canyon up here in this northern one. So it's along those canyons is where these riparian impacts were most prominent. And this is just the list of the impacts themselves, the acreage, and then what portions of those are temporary. This table gives me an opportunity to mention that the application also contained information about what the project could do to upstream portions of South Boulder Creek of the reservoir and downstream portions of South Boulder Creek. And I haven't gotten a chance to dig in a lot to that, but just to explain for just a second, this project will allow the Gross Reservoir expansion project would allow the applicant to access an additional 18,000 acre feet of water from the South Boulder Creek or the Fraser River system. There's a tunnel that goes parallel in the same area as the Moffett Railroad Tunnel, and diverts West Slope water over to the South Boulder Creek drainage, and then ultimately into Gross Reservoir. And of course, after the water leaves Gross Reservoir, it heads down South Boulder Creek. Denver Water has an additional reservoir downstream that they divert their water for their facilities from there, and then it goes into some canals and gets over to Ralston Reservoir. So anyway, part of the environmental impact was analysis also looked at those water supply impacts to South Boulder Creek upstream of the dam and downstream of the dam. And that's why you see some other information there about where some of these impacts would be.
Jeff,
Jeff,
this is Paula, just a comment that, for a project of this size to have, I guess I could say, only 2.24 acres of permanent impact to wetlands, I think is remarkable. And I guess I guess I kind of question it, how it can be so little. And so you're explaining upstream and downstream might be the explanation for it. So I would definitely try to dig into that more
Mhm.
because, I mean, some of the impacts probably have already been done with the existing reservoir, which took out, I'm sure, probably more substantial amounts. But nonetheless, from my experience, that seems pretty remarkably low.
Yeah. That's a great comment. I'm gonna go back. Let's see. I think, yeah, back to this one. I think one of the things that I took away from the materials in the application was a little bit of what I think one of you other members was mentioning earlier. I've already lost who mentioned it, that maybe it was Tony, that the reservoir itself fluctuates so much. And so what you see is, like on a lake that has a stable elevation, there would probably be a lot more vegetation establishment on the shore of the lake over time. But in a situation where you've got a reservoir where that water level is fluctuating a lot, that might be a partial explanation for why the impacted areas are back in these kind of inlets and places where the streams are just entering the reservoir, whereas the rest of the reservoir didn't really have a substrate and didn't have those features before. And then since the inundation or since filling in the 50s, the elevation the elevation varies enough that it's harder for that shoreline vegetation to get established. So that's potentially one explanation, but I think great comment.
Jeff,
Yeah.
do we know who did the wetland mapping? Was it Denver Water? Was it an outside contractor? And has Boulder done its own, to Paula's point?
Good questions. So we would need the applicant here to answer that, who has done this for them. I believe they hired most of that out. And I know that Tetra Tech at times, I remember seeing that name on some of the exhibits here in the application. So, and they've probably had a variety of consultants.
Hey, Jeff, this is Jim Krug. There's two I know. You're right, Tetra Tech, and the other one would probably be Bob Wright's, the Wright Water Consultants.
Oh, yeah, yep. Then the question of whether we will do something, probably not. We would, if we felt that something was missed, that would be something we would ask of the applicant to take a look at. We typically wouldn't do we wouldn't do the wetland survey of an area for an application. So
Okay.
yeah, but we could make that request, and as Paula said, we could do that just because it is, as she mentioned, it is almost a surprisingly low number. So yeah.
It is a surprisingly low number.
Yeah.
I used to work in the 404 program for the EPA and worked with the Corps of Engineers in California. And yeah, I'm a little surprised at how small it is, and not a huge fan of the mitigation banking credits, but we can talk more about that as well.
Okay, this would be a good time to do it. This sort of slide just I just sort of summarize some of the major things. So the Corps issued a 404 permit for this in 2017. The Corps, the Corps found that the project didn't significantly change the aerial extent of wetlands in the area, but they did feel that the riparian impacts were major. Those aren't something that they have as much regulatory oversight over. The applicant, one of the things that they have mentioned, and I neglected to mention this earlier, one of the things that the applicant has cited as a potential way of mitigating some of their impacts is that they have and will be acquiring, I think they have acquired what they call the toll property, and I believe it's over 500 acres in size I believe, in this same watershed. And so they've talked about getting that land that includes, in this instance, 253 acres of riparian woodlands, and getting management of that land to the Forest Service to manage for their purposes and for habitat purposes. And so the applicant has made this, it's called an off-license agreement, I believe. And so they'll have this agreement that will protect these areas. So that's one thing that our staff will be looking at as well, is what is on this property, what does this mitigation exchange kind of look like, and we'll be digging into that analysis here in the next couple of weeks a little bit more as well. Yeah, and so did you have some comments about the Mitigation Bank?
I just skimmed that piece of the application. It wasn't clear to me if they were using credits from a mitigation bank that was creating new wetlands, or if they were considering some of the toll property or other wetlands that they may purchase and protect as their mitigation. So I'm just curious if they actually are creating new wetlands, or if they're trying to protect current wetlands as the mitigation measure.
Well, I'll answer that from my read of the application, and I think it's both. I think my read of the application is that they will be making use of the Army Corps of Engineers. That's USACOE. Sorry, folks, for the acronym there. That's U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the federal agency that regulates the Clean Water 404 regulations for the United States. So they're going to be mitigating the wetland impacts through a Corps approved wetland bank. So they're doing that, and I think the toll property is something that's kind of that's above and beyond what at least that's my sense. I would need to relook at that to know for sure if that was a condition of the Corps' approval of this. So,
okay, that'd be great. I'll dig into it more and see what the ratio of lost land to mitigation banking is.
Yeah,
I'm curious.
And that brings up a good point too. Is if you as you see things, and you can let us know, you can let me know about them, and we can put them in our comments to the community planning and permitting department. So,
yeah, hey Jeff, and maybe Renata has to answer this, is that if we do that, like for example, can I send you an email and copy Renata and not make that an official POSAC communication, or just what's the protocol there?
I might have to have Renata answer that one, or somebody.
Yeah, I mean, people have, POSAC members have the ability to contact staff members directly for questions or information. So, and then I don't know if Jeff thinks maybe it's something that other members might be interested in or might be helpful, maybe I could share that out then, Jeff?
Yeah, that might be really good. So,
all right.
Okay, thank you both.
Yep. All right, folks, we're getting there.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you the 5-minute warning. We have some people online for your next big segment, so I don't want to go
short them. I understand. Well, maybe we can move through this next stuff sort of quickly. Let's see here. So we have a set of images that I'm going to show that look at the terrestrial and aquatic plant impacts in sensitive communities, and I've made little insets. So these again are maps coming from their application, and then going and then I've pulled some insets that zoom into the Gross Reservoir area. So this is going to have a sizable impact, of course, on the area that's inundated by the future reservoir. So that's, 455 acres of area that's just permanently impacted. In the application, they note that about 5 acres of that is going to be significant or sensitive plant communities. Application states that they don't project any federal or state threatened endangered plants to be impacted, but there are going to be some impacts to special status plants. So I'm just going to blast through the next series of slides because unless y'all want to get into details, it's going to be
No.
Okay. All right. These are tables showing all of these impacts. I wanted to have them in here in case we got questions.
Wonderful.
Yes. Let's see, forest impacts. These are the things that are gonna happen. We're gonna, as I mentioned, there was that 455 acres, 250 of that's ponderosa pine forest, 100 and some acres of mixed conifer, some meadows and shrublands, approximately 234,000 trees are gonna be cut. And that's gonna generate 24,000 tons of woody material. Our forestry staff is looking at the applicant's proposal to use sort of some burners, I guess you'd say, to get rid of the biomass. And so our staff is looking into the details of that, and along with the details of the tree removal plan. All right, terrestrial animal impacts. There's going to be some overall impacts, of course. Again, when you're losing that 450 acres of land, you're losing some habitat for a variety of species and across a variety of habitats. We're also affecting portions of the elk migration corridor. You can see that here on this exhibit. According to the application, we're losing about 1 to 2% of the winter concentration area and severe winter range. The project, because of its inundation, is going to result in some changing patterns in the winter as it's anticipated. Here again is what those impacts are going to look like. One other thing I did want to note, they had done some analysis on effective habitat. Effective habitat are the areas that remain when you discount disturbances associated with trails and roads and take into account other landscape features. When you take into account those disturbances with those corridors, you create these buffers that then create less effective habitat. And so you're left with these areas that of effective habitat. And so there is going to be a loss of effective habitat on the property, or with the project, I should say. And it's going to total almost 200 acres.
Jeff, just to clarify, you're talking about fragmentation?
Yeah, and not technically, but you're right. It's effective habitat is one way to look at landscape fragmentation. Yep, exactly. All right. So then there's a couple of areas that we're going to take a stronger look at because we've identified them in our comprehensive plan. One of those is environmental conservation areas. And so you can see here where the Winegar Ridge Environmental Conservation Area extends into the project area. So there's definitely some impacts there. 243 acres, 7% of that ECA. There's also 70 acres of Winegar Gulch. These are potential conservation areas that have been identified by the Heritage Program. And so that's another sort of sensitive area that's going to be impacted. It's going to result in a 3.8% impact of that area. This is other sensitive spots, sensitive areas that have been identified by the Heritage Program. And there's going to be some impacts to the Winegar Ridge area. Here's the acreage for those totals. All right, I'm not going to read these. I am just going to go through those and just say that the the EIS, of course, finds that the impacts can be mitigated through the applicant's proposals in those EIS processes. And those processes resulted in a long list of conditions for the approval of the project. And maybe I will just go back to that for 1 second. So this is just a page that shows these are a number of the different plans that are required by the project. So there's lots of future plans and measures that will need to be taken to ensure that the project would meet the requirements of the federal agency approvals. All right, lastly, there's a couple of, again, resources that we'll be taking a look at, just looking at our natural areas, whether there's an impact on those. These are areas that we've defined as important for the Boulder County landscape, and we want to make sure that the project isn't going to have undue impacts on those. And then I think this is the last slide, is Preble's meadow jumping mouse. We have ended up finding Preble's meadow jumping mice at places on Walker Ranch that make us wonder if they could be found in some of the areas in this project area. This is something that the applicant has looked at extensively in the past, so we're going to have to kind of work through with them on what our recommendations are in that regard. So I just wanted to mention that, and I think that's it.
Thank you, Jeff.
You bet.
Hey,
One question before we let Jeff go. Again, this is Paula.
Yeah.
This is a pretty comprehensive and a good summary of the documents.
Yeah.
Can you make that available somewhere so that we can look at it and review it again?
Oh, sure. My PowerPoint?
Yeah.
You mean, yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I'll get with Renata and get that to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
You bet.
Thank you. Thank you,
bet.
Jeff. The next item, and we got, let the record show, Heather has joined us, and we got Scott's been here. The next item is the open space related midterm updates. And I'd ask for this, since we're going to have to make a recommendation to the county commissioners, that I'd ask the POSAC members to just write down your questions as Jeff presents. And for those of you listening online, what I'll do is I will ask the POSAC members for their questions in order. I'll just call them by name, and they're free to pass if you want. And then I'll go to those of you who are online who wish to have the public comments. Okay. So with that, Jeff, when you're ready with the next piece, please begin. And also one other item, I mentioned it earlier, but a number of folks weren't online. But we have a new POSAC member, Tony Lewis, with us tonight. And Tony, thank you for volunteering and welcome, and appreciate you being here this evening. So with that, whenever you're ready, go ahead, Jeff.
All right. Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Awesome. This one I don't think will take as long, but perhaps I'll be proven wrong here. This is we're at a time frame for a midterm update to the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan. And let me unpack that for just a little bit here. The Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan is the plan that's the two entities, Boulder County and the City of Boulder, use to work on the areas where there's some overlap between the two interests. And so it comes sort of at the boundary of the city and the unincorporated areas of the county. The two entities have felt like it's very important to together plan for this area. It's amazing. There's lots of places in the country, in the state, and in this region where that doesn't happen at all, where cities just kind of annex right over the top of counties. And so it's wonderful to live in a place like Boulder Valley where the two entities can have a understanding of where we would like to see growth occur and where we probably would not like it to see it occur. This has been going on since 1970, and the first plan was approved in 1977 We went through a major update in 2015 that was adopted in 2017. The plans, there's major updates every 10 years. The plans are intended to provide guidance for a horizon of about 15 years. So again, this is a midterm update. And I just wanted to share again some information from just providing you a little bit of background on Boulder Valley Comp Plan. Area 1 is, while not exactly the same as the area inside the city's limits, it's the area within their existing serviced areas. So you can see where those are in Area 1. Area 2 are areas outside the current city limits, but that are eligible for annexation through some form of process. So that's what Area 2. Area 3 is divided into 2 spots. There's areas that are intended in this plan to be preserved for rural preservation purposes. And then there's other areas, you can see them listed there, Area 3 annex potentials. And so those are areas where the city and the county haven't yet determined what's the best use of those sites quite yet. So that's a little bit of background on that. So this evening, what we are looking at for you today is, again, a midterm update, and we're just looking at approval of open space related changes to the land use map. Again, the midterm updates are meant to be for very minor sort of updates, exactly like this, where the city, in this case, the city open space program has acquired an additional 500 and some acres of open space in the Boulder Valley. And so we're going to update the map to reflect that. So you can see, I had to split this so you could see see these areas, but this is the north portion of the Boulder Valley Comp Plan. And so you can see some smaller properties, Snyder, Fort Chambers, the Poor Farm, that's a larger property, an important one. The Boulder Valley Farm way out here, east of 95th Street, is also included in this. On the south side of the system are some other acquisitions that the city has done. South Shanahan, there have been some disposals, and those are also shown here in brown. There's one on South Boulder Road. There's a couple up in the area up here on Suits Trust, so that's just south of Baseline. There's a blow up of some of those as well here. So that's what we're going to be looking at. My next slide is a table of those acreages. These are the ones that would be lands that would be designated for open space as open space acquired, and open space development rights, acquired. So that's the whole list of what I showed on the map before. And then these are the last, these are the properties that are going from either open space or a different designation over to a particular one, because these properties were disposed of by the city. And again, so all of these changes are ones that the city of Boulder has done. They've completed them. You can see they've completed these acquisitions or dispositions. And the county, during this time frame, the county had no land actions within the Boulder Valley area. That is it. And I guess the one thing I could mention is that I've been in correspondence with some folks in the land use department, and I'm gonna read some information from them. The purposes of the midterm updates are to address objectives identified in the last major update and review progress made in meeting those objectives, provide an opportunity for the public to request changes to the plan that do not involve significant city and county resources to evaluate, and make minor additions or clarifications to the policy section. The midterm update is not intended to be a time to consider major policy changes. So the changes in the land use map, again, are allowed at this midterm update. there were some changes that were requested by members, and it sounds like we're maybe going to hear from some of them, so that'll be good to hear some of their requests. Those requests were already previously screened by city and county staff and the approval bodies. Approval bodies in this context means the county's planning commission, the county's board of county commissioners, the city council, and the city's planning commission. And so the proposal that you saw before us was consistent with the purposes of the update as described above, consistent with the current Boulder Valley Comp Plan policies. The Twin Lakes proposals were not moved forward for consideration because the intent is to, again, because the intent of the midterm update is to update it based on the work done in the years since the previous update, and to consider changes that do not involve significant city and county resources to evaluate. And the Twin Lakes proposal exceeds the purpose of the update, and therefore we don't have available resources at this time to evaluate the proposed changes.
Well,
All right.
that's quite a mouthful, Jeff.
I know. I needed
right.
to get.
Thank you. I'll go to the POSAC. I'll go to the POSAC members first, and then we'll go to the public. So, Ann, I'll start with you. Ann, any questions?
Nope, I'll pass. Thank you.
Heather Williams. Heather.
No questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Jen.
No questions, thanks.
Paula Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I guess I'd like Jeff to tease out a little bit more on the Twin Lakes history. Reading the public comments, it looks like, at least from the public perspective, that's more of a housekeeping sort of midterm consistent change from open space to open space acquired, as I understood it. And so why that wouldn't fit into a midterm update, if you can just explain that a little bit more. Does it need more public process, or?
Yeah, we'll need to hear from, I don't want to, we might need to hear from the applicants in particular. We're not of course, this was the subject of a lot of review in this last 2015 update. And I think the staff and the bodies sort of feel like this really got a full airing at that time, and at that very last major update of the Boulder Valley Comp Plan. And so that changing the designations that are shown there now in the Twin Lakes area to an open space designation, again, that prompted a lot of discussion and effort and analysis and such in the 2015 update. And I think people have reason to think that it would take that same level of analysis to go into reviewing that again. And
Okay.
That's not what a midterm is for. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paula. Trace Baker.
Yes, Jeff, the defined terms open space acquired and open space other, could you please define those for me?
Yeah, do you, the open space acquired is going to be the lands that the city acquired. The open space other, I'm going to need to be able to pull that off of, I might have to get back to you on that, or have one of my colleagues look at the Boulder Valley Comp Plan and see if they can find a definition for that.
Okay, would you please, in the meantime, I'll try to find it in the comp plan myself, but those are, they were mentioned in your slides and they're important to the public
They sure are. If I could,
giving input tonight.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Trace. Stephen.
Pass, thank you.
Tony.
Yeah, to follow up with Paula and Trace, Jeff, I'm just curious what the difference in management is between the lands currently at Twin Lakes and what the public is asking, some of the public is asking for. with a designation of open space acquired? Like, does that change the management of those lands? And if so, how?
Let's see. So you're asking if the designation of if the map designations are going to change the management of the land, would you say?
Yeah, because I guess what I'm trying to ferret out, and I'm new to this, so I'll plead ignorance for my first meeting. If people are upset that it's open space acquired in their viewpoint, but it's designated as open space other, I'm trying to figure out what difference does that make? And does that make a difference in terms of how the land is managed or how the land is used?
I guess what I would say is the reason we're doing the land use map changes is, so for example, I'll use the example of one of the, can I go back to my screen, Nick? If I share? Okay. Let me go back to one of these properties here. So can people see this?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, so for example, on one of these properties, the Pearl Parkway right-of-way. So that currently didn't have any sort of land use designation, and now they're proposing, because it's been purchased for open space, they're proposing that it be labeled as such on this land use map. In these, is that answering your question?
Well, I guess I'm looking at it more like a Snyder that was open space other, proposed as open space acquired. What does that do? Like, what change does that actually make for people using that land or for the management of that land? I'm just trying to understand the issues behind the Twin Lakes request to be designated as open space acquired.
I think what we're talking about, like in this case of Snyder, is again, we're talking about subtleties of the city's open space management program. So they, this was something that they, with Snyder, again, we would need to really dig into the details here. But for example, let's go one down. So for that one, my guess is on Stengel 2 Pond, they had previously owned only the development rights and not the land itself. And so then in 2018, they purchased the land itself, and now they're able to manage that property as the owner. So they've acquired the open space interest as opposed to just a development rights interest.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. Scott Miller. Scott, any questions? Oh, we're gonna have to use sign language. There you go, Scott. I can hear you. No.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. It didn't work. Hey, and I'm gonna pass on. I do not have any questions. So I will now ask Nick to take us to the public folks. And I would ask the public speakers to please give your name and address. And can we have those folks on the screen?
Great. We've got, this is Nick Brockman with Boulder County Parks and Open Space. I'm the meeting host. We have Angela Green, Dina McKay, Jessica Hartung, and a caller who I believe is Donna George. We're going to start off with Angela Green. So Angela, I have allowed you to speak. You should be able to unmute yourself. And again, as Chair Krug mentioned, please state your name and your address. Angela, go ahead.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, she's saying she didn't sign up to speak.
Okay.
Well, thank you,
all right.
thank you, Angela, for the note.
All right. Let's go with Jessica.
Hello, this is Jessica Hartung. I live at 6868 Twin Lakes Road. And I am wanting to make sure that as we are discussing the parcels at Twin Lakes, that we are looking at why we really care about parks and open space, and particularly the wildlife corridor that this represents for those animals, environments who have been damaged by the fire, for the development that is yet to come. We can certainly see its progress will continue. And there are some specific areas that really have a wildlife value integrated with housing. And we have that situation. And it's really important to clarify in the maps accurately before any decisions are made. And that's why this is a midterm update request. Thank you.
Jessica, this is Jim Krug, Chairman. Thank you for your comments and coming out tonight. Appreciate it. And we have, I think, one other individual. Nick.
So Dina McKay, I've allowed you to speak, so please unmute yourself.
Hi, Dina. Good evening. This is Jim Krug, Chair. Would you just give us your name and address and tell us what you'd like to say, please? No.
All right, well, I'm not seeing Dina there. We have the caller back on the line. Caller, if you would hit *6 to unmute yourself, you should be able to talk.
Hey, caller. Good evening. This is Jim Krug, POSAC Chair. Would you please state your name and address and tell us what you'd like to talk about, please? Yeah, they hung up on me. Yep. Trying again.
Caller, if you hit *6, you should be able to unmute yourself.
It says I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
We can
Yes,
hear
good
you.
evening. This is Jim Krug, POSAC Chair. Would you please give your name and address and give us your comments, please?
Yes, my name is Donna George, and I live at 4661 Tally Ho Court. I'd like to thank the members of POSAC for hearing the citizens at this meeting, and I'd like to thank Renata for dealing with my slides. If you look at the first slide that I have up, I want to say that I spoke with both Chris Meschuk and the City of Boulder and Boulder County Parks and Open Space Director Eric Lane during the 2015 Boulder Valley Comp Plan update about the inaccuracies on the Boulder Valley Comp Plan map. They did not address these inaccuracies during the major update, even though the City of Boulder did so for their properties. Therefore, during this 2020 BVCP update, I put in a request to have these inaccuracies corrected. Many of these inaccuracies are blatantly obvious and should be corrected. I pointed these out in my presentation of my request for the Boulder Valley Comp Plan 2020 update. Why would staff, POSAC, and county commissioners approve an inaccurate map? Why are these corrections being delayed another 5 years when it has already been delayed for 5 years since the 2015 Boulder Valley Comp Plan update? Don't you want the most accurate map possible? For an example, a blatant inaccuracy on the land use map is the Twin Lakes open space that is designated as open space other and not open space acquired. A parcel right next to it, owned by Brandon Creek or Homeowners Association or Rec Association, has a designation of open space acquired. Please inform me as to why these blatant inaccuracies are not being corrected on the Boulder Valley Comp Plan land use designation map when these other properties are being updated. There's other things that I also mentioned in their parks that are private parks have been labeled as public. They're only supposed to be listed there if they're public parks. And I want to say one of the is mentioned earlier when members were asking questions that it's open space acquired when it is managed, when open space is managed as the owner. And open space is managed. They have a management plan for the Twin Lakes open space. It was bought in 2002. The other thing somebody mentioned was open space other concerned to open space acquired. Well, open space other is lands that they would like to acquire, or the house was acquired before it was like, I'm not sure the exact date, maybe 1987. This land was acquired in 2002, and others maybe a little bit before that. So what is the delay? Is there another thing on why they don't want it to be actually open space acquired? Do they have a plan that the citizens don't know about? So I want to also mention that 2 requests were put in. My request is to make the map as accurate as possible, and also to have the distinctions. All the colors are so similar. When somebody looks at the map, they can't distinguish whether it's open space other or open space acquired. So I wanted those things done. The other request was put in by Twin Lakes Action Group, and that was for having the other lands directly adjacent to the Twin Lakes open space, to be brought into the open space system as a greater Twin Lakes open space. I want to note that some of the reasons they were saying why in the analysis that the Twin Lakes properties requested for open space designation do not meet the criteria for open space acquisition is not true. In truth, they meet all 5 criteria. They are adjacent to existing open space. They have prime agricultural land designations. They provide wildlife habitat and corridor. They provide a trail connection, and they provide beautiful scenic views for the community. In a recent March 2019 edition of Images from Boulder County Parks and Open Space, they wrote about acquisitions. In a nutshell, the real estate division staff looked for land that is threatened by development near or adjacent to existing open space, prime agricultural land, wildlife habitat, riparian and scenic corridors, or land that is useful for trail connections. As I stated, these properties do all of those. So we have 2 things that we're dealing with. One is to make this map as accurate as possible, and why. Some of these things, Legion Park is another one that is not, it's mentioned as public instead open space. It's been on the open space map for years. Another thing I want to note is that the city talked about further analysis and consideration of changing this land use. This is for the other 2 properties that are not yet into the open space system, the fields. It says further analysis and consideration of changing this land use in Area 2, which is designated for development in the comprehensive plan, to open space is complex due to issues such as compensation, future management, and the desired merits of acquisition for open space. They keep talking about Area 2, which is designated for development. Just because it's in Area 2 does not mean it is designated for development. There, Twin Lakes itself, the Twin Lakes open space, is in Area 2. There are open space properties on Sombrero Ranch that's in Area 2. The city of Boulder just recently purchased a property on Baseline Road that was in Area 2. It had a house on it. And do you know what they did? They transferred it to Area 1 because they wanted to do some updates on the house. But instead of doing the updates, they tore the house down. It is now in Area 1. All this talks about annexation. How can you annex something? It's very easily. If it's enclosed in an area for 3 years, you can annex it without question. So what are we really talking about here? Is this an annexation issue, or is this about actually being accurate and truthful to the citizens? I also want to show that inaccuracies in land use map, you can see on that map that,
Miss George.
hello?
George?
Yes?
Yeah, you're very passionate. I hate to cut you off, but we try to limit citizens' comments to about 5 minutes. So could you please wrap up?
Yes, I will. Okay, so on that inaccuracies in land use map, that I hope they have that slide up there, it shows the Twin Lakes. It shows it was bought in 2002 for $130,000. It shows it on the map as OSO for the Boulder Valley Comp Plan. And then on the other section there on the left, it shows the land owned by Brandon Creek, which has an OSA designation. If the people here cannot see the total blatant inaccuracies here, I don't understand it. So I want to know, are we kicking this can down the road for another 5 years? Is something in the wind here that citizens don't know about? What is going on? I really would like some answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. George, and thank you for taking the time and speaking to us tonight. And your comments and your information will be entered into the record. Thank you. Nick, is there any other public comment?
Yes, we have one more. Let's try Dina again.
Okay.
Dina, are you there? Dina going once. Dina going twice.
Okay. Thank you, Nick. At this time, at this time, I'd like to, the chair will entertain a motion to approve recommending the open space update be forwarded on to the Planning Commission and the Boulder County Commissioners.
Chair Krug, would you like me to go over those designations that some of the members had requested?
Yeah, would the members like that? Would that be helpful, or are you okay?
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again here. Well, let me see. Here we go. Hopefully you guys can see that. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So I think one of and I can apply this to some of the comments that we heard too. So I think one of the points being made was that we have some areas that show as open space other, and what that designation, as you can read there, was intended to show was that prior to 1981, the city and county would evidently label things on the map as something they like, kind of an opportunity area. So areas of open space that had not been acquired, but that they were looking, that the county would like to preserve through various methods, but hadn't been able to do, which explains why some of these areas had that label, and then as they get acquired, they become OSA acquired. And so I think, to be honest, I'm a little embarrassed that we hadn't looked at some of these other areas that on our map. And so I think some of the public comments make some great points that we maybe should be looking at, taking a harder look at this map, because there might be some areas that we do need to change in this land use map. So there's that are ones that the county has some has ownership interest in. So there.
Okay. So I'll go back to it. Would anybody like to make a motion at this time?
This is Paula. I would like to move that we postpone action on this item until Parks and Open Space staff can take a better look at the map and look for those inaccuracies.
And
This is Ann. I'll second.
Okay, thank you. We have a second. So we'll put it to well, let's have it. Is there any other discussion before we put it to the vote? Hey, Jeff, I just have one comment. I guess this is me because I'm so, educationally challenged. I agree. I have the April 2016 open space map.
Yes.
And I was looking at it the other day, and I did find some of the colors a little confusing.
Yes.
And again, I find Blackboard confusing. So
Yep.
I guess to follow up to Paula's recommendation and Jen and
Yeah.
Heather's second, is that to me, I like it. Can you come back with something visual?
Yeah.
Like a map done, so to speak,
Yeah.
and take that view graph and put on the map and see what that looks like?
Yes.
Okay. So with that, then, is there any other comments or
Yeah.
discussion? Jeff or Stephen?
I seem to recall with regard to this Twin Lakes that we had some input from the county attorney's office about some questions about what had been acquired at the time. Do you recall that, Jeff?
Yeah, and I think what one of the things that I guess I would distinguish. So some of the stuff that was commented on about there are a couple of Twin Lakes related parcels that currently are not, they're shown as public and low density residential right now.
Right.
And so that, I think what we're talking about is those, like that's the big discussion, that's the one that would be the to occur at a major update. But I think what I'm hearing tonight is that there are some issues associated with some properties in the Twin Lakes area that we have some open space ownership interest, and we need to reflect that better on the map.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I agree. Okay, so we have a motion, a second, to postpone the recommendation to the Planning Commission and Board till a later time, till we have a little more work to do. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Let the record show the motion carries.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
We like to create more work for you.
No, it's needed. We need to catch that.
I think it will look nice when it's done, and that's important. So with that, if he's still awake and still with us, live from Longmont. You in Longmont tonight, Eric?
I am, with a great net connection.
We have the director's update.
Yeah, hi everybody. Number one, I just wanted to say thank you to Jeff and to the rest of our staff, especially Ron West, who is our mole in the CPP department, working on the gross reservoir referral is a heavy lift, and it has to be done in a remarkably short period of time, even with the extension that Dale Case, CPP director, has granted, because it's such a voluminous application to go through. So thank you to Jeff, thank you to Ron, thank you to the other staff experts who are helping to weigh in on the various aspects and lend our department's expertise to this weighty application and on such a short turnaround time. I just want to relay that really appreciate Jeff in particular, because he, as soon as he saw this coming down the pike, he knew he was the right person to do it, so it wouldn't really overburden other staff. And I appreciate him taking this on, because it's definitely a project. So tonight, and I would say also welcome, Tony. Appreciated having the orientation with you the other day. It's nice to have you on the board.
Nice to be here. Nice to join you all.
Tonight is it's going to be an atypical POSAC meeting from your. You should know this is a little atypical, because a 1041 is extremely rare, and you guys being involved in a referral is extremely rare. So that's kind of a weird one-off. And I'm also going to make my director's update a bit of a one-off as well, because lots happened in the last week, particularly with the Calwood fire and the Left Hand fire. So I just wanted to talk to you about that a bit. And I also imposed upon Stefan Reinhold to join me this evening to give you a little bit of a presentation, so that you could have a better understanding of what's happening in that neck of the woods, particularly at Hile Valley Ranch and with the Calwood fire, which, as I'm sure you've heard, is the largest fire in the county's recorded history. So I want to first say I'm just going to focus my remarks on our property, Ohio Valley Ranch. It's not to discount in any way what a number of our community members are going through with respect to loss of their houses and property and being displaced from emergency evac situations, and obviously a lot of concern and worry. I am heartened that right now the prognosis for getting the fire completely contained is good, and that is certainly helped by the weather. I was hoping to get a little bit of a update from Joe Pelly, who has a meeting this evening, to get a few more facts and figures about containment and that sort of thing. But I did speak to him earlier today, and he was able to relay that things are in really good shape for the Cowwood fire. It's not really moving or expanding. The eastern border, which is along Highway 36, and the southern border are both pretty cool. There aren't hot spots there, so the fire seems naturally contained in a lot of respects, and that the concern still remains to be along parts of the northern border in the canyon with St. Vrain Creek because of all the nooks and crannies that the fire can sort of hang out in. So I think the prognosis is good, but I wanted to just share with you what's happened in the last week. And that started with a phone call to me from Bevan Carruthers, who's our lead ranger, to let me know what was going on, and that we were deploying to evacuate visitors from Ohio Valley Ranch because the conditions warranted it. And while I don't have a lot of details to share with you on that because I haven't heard too many about them, the Rangers did a great job of getting to Ohio Valley Ranch quickly and getting people out of harm's way before any harm could come to people visiting the park. And subsequent to that, it's all been about fire management at Ohio Valley, and it's a fire that has touched the majority of the property. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and bring up a very impromptu slideshow to give you some indication of what's cooking. I meant that metaphorically, actually, not literally. Hang on, this doesn't seem to be, there we go. So hopefully you can all see that. This is a map from yesterday. I don't know what day I'm on today. So this shows the extent of the Cowwood fire. I think you can see my cursor. And you can also see what's going on with the small left-hand fire, which fortunately got started the day after the Cowwood, but really has not been able to get going to the same sort of size and extent as Cowwood for a variety of reasons. But this is it. So you can see Lions here. You can see Highway 36 here. You can see where left hand comes in. So it's extensive, and it started up at Cowwood, obviously, and very rapidly blew to the east. And I think I got the first indication that we had a fire shortly after noon, heading closer to 1. And then I think by 4 o'clock, I understood that we were already at 4,000 acres. So it moved incredibly rapidly. And to have an appreciation of the land ownership that it's affecting, this is a pretty accurate map. All the dark green is the land that we own in fee title. The sort of lime green are things that we have easements on. This is National Forest Service, and the white is private or state land board or other, I think, on this map. So you can see that a good half of the fire has consumed or affected parks and open space property, which is really significant. I'm not sure exactly what the timeline on this one is, but it shows acreage. So it shows the perimeter and then the approximate acre by ownership. And at the time that this was taken, the perimeter encompassed 10,000 acres and about 4,400 of that was us. So it's obviously a very significant impact to parks and open space properties. So what I wanted to show you, and then I'm going to ask Stefan to step in and kind of round things out, but I wanted to show you what I saw on Sunday, and some of these pictures were taken by Bevan Carithers, our lead ranger, and some of them were taken by me, and I've tried to put them in a little bit of an organized pattern. So as you enter Gear Canyon and head towards the main trailhead at Heil, obviously the first thing that you run into that you'd recognize is the new Corral trailhead, which has that lovely restored caboose, which was one of the first thoughts I had in my mind about the sorts of infrastructure that we might lose. So that entire corral area was not impacted by the fire. There's another shot here that shows the western edge where the fire burned down from. The overland burn is kind of behind this smoke and fog, but burned down through the trees and petered out here just beyond our fence line. And the reason for that was largely extremely fortunate and well-placed slurry bomber runs, which prevented the fire from moving further south and getting into Left-Hand Canyon itself. It did cross, obviously, from west to east, and it crossed over Gear Canyon, but the slurry bombers painted a stripe down the southern part of the overland burn and crossed right by the northern edge, I think, of our all of that work at the Corral trailhead, and then went up the other side, up the ridge line. And it's pretty obvious in places, everything is burned to the north of those lines. And we're fortunate that this infrastructure was behind the line and that it was able to contain the fire. So everything at the Corral trailhead, and including just further south, the Altona Schoolhouse, all of that is safe and sound. And then if you proceed towards the main trailhead, I think most of you know, you sort of go, there's a little fork in the road and you turn right and you go over the bridge and into the parking lot. If you actually go left and you go up the hill, you hit a gate. And beyond that gate is a private residence, as well as Kevin Grady, our ranger's caretaker residence, as well as this cabin. I think this is the Gear cabin, which was worked on just a few years ago by Boulder County Youth Corps, who did a lot of restoration. And it was, fire went all the way around this cabin and burned everything around it. Fortunately, did not combust this tree. And that's why this cabin is still perfectly intact and standing. This is the caretaker's cabin, perfectly intact and standing. And as I understand it, part of that's probably due to our ranger, who's done a great job with defensible space up there and continues to keep the grass really low. So the fire petered out here. And the thing that I thought for sure would be gone is this historic barn, because I like to say that it just looks like, if you looked at that barn wrong, it would probably go up in flame, because it's just such a old, weathered, wonderful historic barn. But the fire is all along the back and along the side. But one thing that certainly helps is it has a pronounced stone, sort of a raised stone foundation that goes all the way around. And you can see there's even stone on the backside. So because of some defensible space measures, because of some of the fortunate construction methods that were used, and probably just good luck itself, that whole complex is fine. And if you go further up the road here, you go up to the private residence that's back there. And I included these just because I thought this was great. And I understand from Vivian, you'll be able to read about this draft horse and this donkey in the paper soon. The family that lives here were unable to load up the horses, and so they had to evacuate and leave the horses behind. And when the firefighters finally got in, they were greeted by these two horses who were probably really glad to see somebody friendly. And this next picture just shows you how big a draft horse that guy is. So That's if you go up Gear Canyon and head west into the heart of where the burn originated. And if you go up to the main trailhead, you might be surprised to find that the bathroom is still fully intact. I don't have a picture of the shelter, but the shelter is fully intact and was not touched, even though fire went on 3 sides of it. This is significant damage here. This is one of the 2 bridges that cross the little creek on the east side of the main trailhead and access some of the trails there. So obviously fire hit that, didn't destroy it, but the other bridge was completely consumed almost. There's just the bare bones that are left. And so from what I can see at Ohio Valley Ranch, these 2 bridges are the most significant losses in infrastructure. And I considered us to be incredibly fortunate and this to be incredibly minor relative to what we could have lost, particularly in things that are not replaceable, like the caboose, like the historic barn, like the gear cabin. And then there's plenty of minor damage where these ties that help delineate the gravel and the picnic table are just being eaten away slowly by kind of a smoldering fire. And so you can just sort of see the metal joinery sticking out in places. So that's what I wanted to mention to you about the infrastructure at Heil, and that we feel fortunate that at least for our park, the losses could have been a lot worse, not the least of which to speak about visitors and nearby residents and all that kind of stuff. And before I ask Stefan to talk to you more about the impacts on the forest, I also wanted to kind of do a shout out. The Boulder County Fairgrounds, as some of you may or may not know, act as an evacuation center and emergency collection point for livestock in the county. And within the space of probably 8 or 9 hours, it was full of horses in particular, as well as other things. And additional horses were being diverted to the Jefferson County Fairgrounds. So when the evacuation order went out, a lot of people pulled together their livestock and brought them to the fairgrounds, which is what it's there for. And we have a great team of staff and volunteers who, unfortunately or fortunately, are well versed in dealing with these sorts of emergencies, and we're able to stash a lot of horses, close to 500, for at least 24 hours until things could settle down and people whose properties were on Sunday determined no longer to be in danger could come and collect their animals. And the numbers dropped fairly rapidly over the next couple of days. I think on Monday or Tuesday, we were down to just 77 horses, but all of our horse stalls were full. We had goats. We had, I think, 2 chickens. We had 2 yaks. We had a llama. We had a bunch of random things. These goats were actually having a great time. It didn't seem like it mattered to them that they were in a new home for a couple of days. We had a whole group of shires and this one llama, who I guess they all like to hang out together. So the place was full. And I just want to credit our staff and the volunteers for doing a great job of putting a lot of livestock owners' hearts and minds at ease by having a safe place to take them with supplies and bedding and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's it for my brief presentation. What I'd like to do is ask Stefan if he would come online and put up his slides of the forest so you can get a better appreciation of what the burn impact looks like at Ohio Valley Ranch and in the area. So Stefan?
Great. Can you guys see my screen here?
Yes.
Great. So my name is Stefan Reinhold. I'm the Senior Forestry Resource Specialist. And as Eric mentioned, he wanted me to talk to you a little bit about the vegetation and what occurred and what we have seen just on an initial basis. Obviously, things will change over the next few weeks and years. And so I can't give you an exact answer. But if you look at this map, and I'm going to put my cursor out here. So the areas that I put on this map are areas where we as open space have done forest treatments. So we've done thinning work. A good portion of it, so this whole section right here in the middle, we have done prescribed fire on. We've done prescribed fire back in some of the meadows back here by the caretaker's house. The other location, so this one up here, we've just done a thinning project. And most recently, this yellow area was where we just did that helicopter thinning project. So I just wanted you to see this in context of the park itself. And right now, where the line is, it kind of comes through here, the top, the fire line, I should say, comes through the top right here. And so I just wanted you to see that as well. So now I have to switch the screen one more time. So just hold on a second here, because I have it in a different folder. And that would be this one. And share. Okay, so first off, this was an unbelievably fast-moving fire. Sustained winds of 40 miles an hour. And I don't even know what the gusts were because I haven't had a chance to go back and find out everything, but it was moving very, very quickly. And when that happens, unfortunately, even the best projects in the world are not going to be able to stop something like that. As we saw today, a fire was able to blow across the divide. So if that's not the best fuel break in the world, I don't know what is. There's a lot of damage. These forests aren't designed for these high intensity fires, especially on a landscape scale. Hitting little pockets here and there, you're going to get some intense fire on even a low intensity wildfire, and that's okay. But when you get it on the landscape scale, it can be pretty devastating. But when we went back in, we see some green trees, and that's obviously a good sign. A lot of these areas where we see survival are the areas that we treated, areas that we had removed fuel, areas that we had done prescribed fire and gotten the ground fuel away. This particular shot is actually near a drainage, so of course it's going to be a little wetter. And this is down below the cliff of above the Lichen Loop parking lot. So this is the drainage down below. So this just saw some thinning down at the lower section here. Just another perspective there. But then there's some areas that were hit really hard. And this was an area that was also treated. So just because we treated an area doesn't mean that's guaranteed that there's going to be some survival. That tree did finally fall, by the way. But again, you look at these different areas where this was an area that we did prescribe fire in. And so how come these areas survived? And again, I will bet that it has a lot to do with the fuel that was there on the ground. We're going to have researchers here wanting to study our treatments and what occurred for the next 5-6 years, I would guess. Another good shot here. One of the things that low intensity fire typically does is it burns the lower branches off a tree and then kind of hardens the bark a little bit so that if another fire comes, it's even stronger and able to withstand fire. So it's kind of a self-pruning method. And we see that with our prescribed fires happen all the time where some of the lower branches get burned off. So I'm showing you some of the good stuff, but there's going to be a few shockers. This is okay because this was an open grassland shrubby area. But this is over by Red Hill looking down towards the Picture Rock Trailhead, which would be out over here somewhere, I believe. The grasslands burned well, just like a prescribed fire would have. So good news. This is looking back the other direction, again, a shrubby hillside. There is a fire line that was constructed that kind of comes down this hillside. But fire, we have turkeys right away back in there pecking at the insects. Pockets of unburned fuel, and again, this is up near our prescribed fire units. Turkeys coming to talk to the firefighters. It was pretty neat to see. Again, some more heat here. You can see the scorch on these trees. Oh, this one almost went all the way up there, but it's still got some green on it. I have hopes for this stand here. Once again, for this one. But then there's spots like this. And this is back behind Ingersoll Quarry. And it's complete tree loss, complete. There is no green on any of this. And unfortunately, this is what it's like on most of the western portion of the property, especially on the far western side, because no treatment had occurred and it was just hot in those areas. It did uncover, I mean, we knew this was here, but it uncovered a dry stack wall that Carol Beam, our historic preservationist, is very familiar with, and I think she's going to be able to get out and see some interesting things post-fire. Again, kind of a little bit of a moonscape here. Probably some hydrophobic soils, so that could be a problem in this area. So we're definitely going to have to do some rehab. A real quick, another infrastructure success story. This is a $17,000 weather station. And as we were staging to go do initial attack on the fire, all of a sudden we said, uh-oh, we have our weather station up there. Well, our weather station is actually queued up to our radios. And so we called it and it started broadcasting and telling us what the weather was at that moment. So we knew that it survived. We didn't know if it had any minor damage or anything like that, but so it collects data. A lot of times we have it set up so it collects data and goes online. This data here is actually, we're gonna have to download it and take a look. And so it might have some interesting temperature spikes and wind speed spikes. So it'll be pretty neat to see what it recorded. But if you look around here, looks like we got some good survival, but then look, there's a pocket of dead trees. Now, if that occurred on a low intensity wildfire, that's not a big deal. That's something normal. That's what we should see. It's those big, long stretches of tree loss that are disheartening. The deer were right away back in it. Not too concerned. This is a quick shot of Marietta Canyon down here, and this is what disturbs me the most. Is this is heavy tree loss in a hard drainage, and so with rain events and things like that, we could see some real bad erosion potential. So something that concerns me. Looking across, you can see that whole hillside is just lost. Again, we did get some pockets of what we call refugia and survival, and that's going to be a good thing because it's not a complete loss because we still have some seed source there. So these trees will produce cones and they will drop seeds down the hill. Another great look at one of our prescribed fire areas, and I think that's where we're going to have our best survival, is at this spot here. This is our most recent treatment. So it's basically came down from here. We treated all that. The lower areas, it did what it was supposed to do. It got fire back on the ground, but because things were moving so fast, it raced up this hill and up and over the top. And so you can see a lot of the trees near the top were lost. Unfortunately, a lot of those trees up there were in the 300 to 400 year range age-wise. So it's kind of disappointing. We lost a lot of that. We had our big log deck from all the work that we had done, and that was going to heat our facilities, open space facilities in the jail for a couple years, and that is gone. That burned like a house, unfortunately. This is looking back towards the Lichen Gulch quarry. And we backburned this, so it did act more like a prescribed fire. And we backburned it to keep it from coming across 36. This was a flat area near the top, which I was surprised that it burned so hot and killed all the trees here. I wanted to show this picture quickly. Eric had showed it before, but one thing that concerns me is the shade of the green on these trees. Even though they look like they have needles and look like they survived, they will most likely die in the next couple years. It's just too significant of a loss. what you're going to look for is on this next photo, you can see more green in the top of this tree. And that's going to be the sign that has a better chance of survival. But look how faded these needles are down here. They all got singed. So my guess is we are going to lose a lot more trees around the parking lot. And so we're going to have to, there are a lot of papers on how to do assessments for if a tree will survive or not. And we're going to have to really start doing that research and determining what we're going to find. Again, this is from the Lichen Loop Trail where it starts to meet the Wapiti Trail. Looking back, and again, just some significant loss to the western side of the park. Just another picture there. And I showed this one just as an example of when trees have branches that go down to the ground. Fire uses it as a ladder to get to the top of the canopy, because this was in an open area, but still was torched. Again, that flat area, it was at the top of that Marietta Canyon that I had showed you. And so it raced up the hill and all that heat just blew through. And I'm almost done here. A couple pockets you can see of some good survival, but you see these big blown out sections. This section doesn't bother me as much because there is some survival and some pockets and some openings. And so these are good things and not terrible on the landscape. Again, another prescribed fire area. This is a lightning scar that the fire went up, but when I was there, it was completely out. So this is what kind of makes what we call our legacy trees. Like I said before, it kind of hardens that bark and makes it able to survive future wildfires. And so I'm hoping that this will be one of our future legacy trees. And you may have heard the term old growth. Old growth is really a term based on a forest, not based on an individual tree. So that's why we use the term legacy tree. It's something that has old growth potential in a forest structure. And then we had a couple good old growth trees that did survive, old growth legacy trees. So, but look at all the scarring from the fire there. And this guy, no problems. And then the final slide here was just the other day, when I was driving out, I saw this white smoke and saw this shoot up, and then all of a sudden we saw the big fire from the East Troublesome come across. So I thought it was our fire blowing up, and I'm thankful that it wasn't. So that's all I had there. So I'm going to stop my share. I can answer a couple questions. Or
does anybody have any questions? Or Eric, do you have anything more?
Yeah, just a couple things that I would add. I'd say, we're obviously only 1 week into this fire, so we don't know everything, and we're not going to know everything for a while. So right now we're doing everything that we can to assist the sheriff's office and work with our other agencies to try to minimize the potential for more fires, although the weather is really helping with that a lot right now. We're very thankful for that. But otherwise, just to support them, support the Forest Service with their forest closure, which is really aimed at trying to make sure nothing else happens while all of our resources are fully deployed on our 2 fires and up the hill at the fire that's in the Estes Park area. So I'm hoping, I think we're all very optimistic based on the weather that we'll be able to get these things fully contained and basically sit on them until the weather and firefighting capabilities just put them out and take us out of sort of the danger zone. So what I would expect is that we'll be coming back to you at a meeting a couple, 3 months maybe from now, when we can really give you a thorough assessment of what happened and talk to you about the restoration activities that we have planned. Meetings have already started with NRCS and local collaborators, state and federal agencies, to start doing the assessment and think about laying the foundation for the recovery and restoration activities that will certainly have to happen in some places in order to address things like soil erosion, et cetera, for water quality downstream and all that sort of thing. So things are underway even while we're still working on putting the fire out. There are already staff who are serving as experts in the field to support the future activities. And what you may or may not know is that when a fire is underway, we also have staff experts who can help inform the firefighting elements, where you might want to put the dozer line, where you certainly don't want to put the dozer line, if you can avoid it at all, so that when the firefighting is happening, we're trying to minimize our long-term impact and at the same time support those operations. So we're still in full swing, even with the better weather. But my expectation is that we'll come back to you when we really have sort of a more solid understanding of what happened, what we're up against, and what we can project the future to be for essentially High Valley Ranch from a parks and open space perspective.
Okay, thank you. You look tired.
It's been a week.
Yeah, I spent all day running around trying to winterize some people's houses who abandoned their houses.
Good for you. Thank you.
We figured there's about 190 of them. And we don't know, you can't track down the people, and what's coming this weekend, and they have no power, and they left fast enough. So the pipes and the water's in the pipe. So if we get the cold weather, it's going to be in other words, unfortunately, some people, they lucked out there. They didn't get hit by the fire, but it might be broken water pipes might be the least of their problems when they get back in. Okay, thank you. Anything else? We adjourned?
I'm good if you are.
All right, thank you all. Be safe.
Thanks.
Be safe.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
See you next month.